The fall season is in full swing. We've got a few new shows to tackle there. NBC's sci-fi hit La Brea, and as well a couple of talk and variety shows. We've got Jay Leno resurrecting You Bet Your Life and a Nick Cannon talk show, while we play catch up with a few shows from September. Scenes from a Marriage on HBO, and as well a couple of shows on FX, on Hulu, The Premise, and Why the Last Man. Let's talk TV. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to TV News and Reviews for the week. Like I mentioned, we've got 6 new shows to tackle. Still catching up with some of the ones from a few weeks ago, but want to dive deep into the brand new fall shows. So we're going to lead off with La Brea on NBC, which is turning out to be a pretty big ratings hit for them. But first, before we get to all of that, we of course have to do the news. So let's start with renewals and cancellations. A lot of renewals going out now that the TV season has officially begun. So first on Starz, BMF, which stands for Black Mafia Family, just debuted on September 26th. And this is another one from the Curtis 50 Cent Jackson camp. It doesn't relate to his show Power on there, but he's obviously been producing a lot of good stuff for Starz. And it just premiered last week, the #1 premiere on the network for the year. So they have said yes already to season 2. I don't have Starz, so I will see if I can find BMF to review for you guys. I'd like to review something on Starz because I don't review any of the Power shows because I missed the first one, and so I'm so lost in that universe. But The Real World Homecoming is getting a seasons 2 and 3 on Paramount Plus. They did the first one when Paramount Plus launched in, I think, May. But season 2 will take place as a reunion of 1993's LA season, and then they haven't announced what season 3 will be. But the LA season, if my memory is correct, that is the one with Puck and Pedro, and that's the first season I watched. I did not have MTV at this point, but my friends did, and we gathered and watched this season at one of my friends' places. And Pedro was one of the first celebrities, so to speak, that was open about his HIV status. And he ended up, of course, passing away a couple of years later. But, if memory serves, this was that season. So they'll have, I guess, everybody on except for him. But I'm sure there'll be some tributes, talking about him and all of that. Pedro Zamora. And that's something I just still know that. I didn't look that up or anything. I'm not even positive this is that season, but Pedro Zamora, I mean, that is a name that has, been burned in my mind for the last 30 years. So, very cool. Full Frontal with Samantha Bee is set for season 7 now on TBS. This is sort of a perennial at this point. Now, she is moving to Thursday from her longtime Wednesday position, but the current season averages 2.9 million a week over all platforms. So that's pretty good in this day and age. Archer for season 13 on FXX. This will address the loss of Jessica Walter, the actress who voiced Mallory. They are in the middle of season 12 now, which she is a part of. She voiced all of that stuff before her passing. So she'll be, lasting through that season, and then they'll address it next year. The other 2 renewed for season 3 at HBO Max. Now, I saw this coming up on my HBO Max, suggestions, and I was like, oh, cool, this is a new show, I'll check it out. And it's not actually. Its first season was on Comedy Central, and they aired it shortly before I started doing these reviews. So I never actually got around to watching that. But it does look interesting. It looks funny, so I may check that out. I think Molly Shannon maybe is in it. Sex Education renewed for season 4 on Netflix just a week after the season 3 premiere, which has 100% on Rotten. And I saw at least the first season. I'm not sure if I watched the second one or not, but in this day and age, it is kind of rare for a Netflix show to get that 4th season. So obviously they're pretty much behind it. It always does well, apparently, at the BAFTAs as well, the British version of the Oscars and the Emmys. So obviously that's some prestige points for it. And then Sex Life renewed for season 2 at Netflix. This is a horrible, horrible show. I believe I gave it an F earlier this year, but if you liked it, then you're in luck. Season 2 is coming. And then this is an interesting one. I liked this show. but it got canceled on CBS a few months ago. But All Rise has been revived. It's coming back for a third season, a full 20 episode season, not on CBS, but on OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network. And it sort of makes sense that CBS did kill it. It was the worst performing scripted hour on CBS last season. But one of the few CBS shows with a black lead. The only two I can think of are kind of co-leads, LL Cool J and Chris O'Donnell on that one NCIS show, and then Cedric the Entertainer on The Neighborhood. But again, that's kind of a two-hander with Max Greenfield. So other than that, yeah, I can't think of any shows they have that are African American led. But anyway, I liked All Rise. I thought it was a good show. So I'm happy to see that back. And here's what's kind of cool because I don't have OWN, but HBO Max and Hulu will be running the third season as well. I assume sort of like next day kind of thing. So if you were a fan of that show and either you have OWN or Hulu or HBO Max, you can enjoy the upcoming season. And then just one show ending for you, and that is Mr. Corman. This is done after just one season. Joseph Gordon-Levitt starred in this, and I gave it a moderate grade. I think it was in that B minus C plus type of range. Only the second show that Apple TV Plus has canceled outright. Little America was the first, but Gordon-Levitt also has another show on Apple that I hope to review next week, Wolf Boy and the Everything Factory. It's an animated show. I believe he lends a voice, but he definitely is the executive producer of it. So we'll see how that is. Like I said, I've got a lot of shows on the back burner from September because I've been focusing my efforts the last couple of weeks on the new fall broadcast season. So there's been some streaming shows kind of piling up, but I'd like to get to that at some point. A couple items of note about, casting and whatnot. Jesse Palmer is set as the host of season 26 of The Bachelor. I'm not really familiar with him, but after he was on The Bachelor in 2004, I guess he was The Bachelor. And then after that, his success, from that show spun him off into being an ESPN analyst. And so now he's going to return as the host, of course, after all of the Chris Harrison, all of his kind of stuff after hosting for so many years, and sort of, releasing some comments that certainly could have been construed as racist and were by some. So he has bounced from that. But I guess if you like The Bachelor, you probably know who this Jesse Palmer is. And then I thought this was interesting. After 22 years, Natalie Morales from The Today Show is leaving NBC News completely. She said she had another opportunity that she has not revealed yet. But she will get a send-off on The Today Show in the next few weeks. But she will still be on Dateline for the rest of the year because a lot of those packages are sort of, pre-planned. Dateline isn't really like the breaking news show. It's more of, my wife murdered me or I murdered my wife or whatever. That kind of stuff. So she's obviously put those packages together already. But all right. And then in terms of reboots and spinoffs, we have a few of those as well. So a couple of movie spinoffs. So Let the Right One In, which is a vampire movie that has a big cult following in its original foreign form. I forget what country made it, but then they did an American version that I thought was not that great. But it is coming to Showtime for a 10-episode first season. Obviously, vampire shows all the rage still, so that makes sense. And then Cruel Intentions is getting another shot at TV. And I didn't realize this, but I say another shot because NBC did a pilot 5 years ago to try and bring Cruel Intentions to the small screen. Didn't happen. They passed on it. But now we're bringing it back. And IMDb TV is where you'll be able to find that eventually. Writers Phoebe Fisher and Sarah Goodman from Amazon's upcoming I Know What You Did Last Summer reboot are on board for that one. And then a Teen Wolf sequel movie is coming to Paramount Plus. So I'm not talking about the original 80s movies. I'm talking about a movie version of the MTV series Teen Wolf that was a huge cult hit several years ago. So with that, the full 100 episodes of Teen Wolf will be coming to Paramount Plus in December. So you can catch up on all of that before you see the movie. And then a live-action Aeon Flux also in the works at Paramount Plus. MTV is really mining their old cartoon hits for other properties. They have a Daria spinoff coming to Comedy Central. I think they're reviving Beavis and Butthead again for Comedy Central, and then Paramount Plus, I guess, is looking to do an Aeon Flux show, and they did a movie version of that with Charlize Theron, probably about 20 years ago at this point. All right, and then Babylon 5, a couple of sci-fi things. Babylon 5, a reboot coming to the CW with the original series creator J. Michael Straczynski. He will pen the pilot script at least for the update, and then hopefully sort of be involved after that. So that's kind of cool. I was never a fan, but I don't think I ever saw it, but I know some of my sci-fi friends swear by this show, love, love, love on Babylon 5. So, it's interesting that the CW has sort of turned a little bit on what they've been known for. They're still doing the sort of, brooding type of supernatural things. But the last couple of things I've announced for the CW seem like they're a little more, I don't know, mature maybe. Obviously, they'll find their own, way of doing it and making it steamy and with all these hot 20-year-olds. But whatever. We'll see how that goes. And then Book of Boba Fett, which is going to be a spinoff of The Mandalorian, that will debut December 29th on Disney+. Jon Favreau is going to be executive producer there. And the show is going to center on Boba Fett, played by Tamura Morrison, and then Ming-Na Wen's mercenary character as they navigate the galaxy's underworld, returning to Tatooine and staking a claim on the territory once owned by Jabba the Hutt and his syndicate. I don't really care about Star Wars. I never even finished The Mandalorian, so but there is another new Star Wars cartoon show, I think, that just came out on Disney+. I haven't been reviewing the cartoons. I will review this because I did review The Mandalorian, but when they get into all the different, spiderweb side tracks of Star Wars, I can barely keep up with the regular stuff. So I probably won't watch the new cartoon that just aired, but I suppose I will watch the Book of Boba Fett when that comes out. And then here was the biggest news of the week. This was a big reboot surprise. Law and Order, the original, not SUV, not whatever else, Criminal Intent, the new or the original Law and Order returning for season 21 to NBC. Dick Wolf, the showrunner, the creator, was furious when they canceled the show just shy of its 20th season after season 20. It had tied, at that point in time, Gunsmoke was the longest running primetime drama of all time. And that is a title. It was the longest running primetime show for a long time until The Simpsons beat it about, 15 years ago now. But Law and Order had tied that, and Dick Wolf was like, awesome, we're going to break this record. Wasn't meant to be. NBC said no thank you. And so they canceled it after 20 years. He was so mad. But then SVU, his other Law and Order show, broke that 20-year record a few years ago. I think it's in season 23 or 24 now. So that's been going. But Wolf also does the Chicago franchise for NBC, which is a big hit. And then the other Law and Orders that are on. And then he also has on CBS all those FBI shows. So, this guy really, he doesn't get talked about enough anymore. But he really is one of the most prolific, showrunners and creators still out there. Which is crazy because he that first Law and Order started probably 28 or 29 years ago. Long time. All right, so let's get into the reviews. That's all I've got for the news. So let's shift it over here to some of the new shows that are on. La Brea on NBC. This is a big ratings hit for them. The next day numbers prove that this is the #1 show new for the season in adults 18 to 49. So very, very exciting and impressive. And this is a sci-fi drama. It's in the vein of a lot of these recent NBC shows that they sort of usually cancel after a year or two, but Manifest is probably the most recent example of this. But they all sort of harken back and take a page from ABC's Lost. And in fact, if they didn't hit you over the head with it enough, one of the characters in this first episode mentions, hey, maybe we're just in an episode of Lost, when they can't figure out what's going on. So that really, it's a little too on the nose. But basically the plot of this is they are in La Brea, right around that tar pit area. The La Brea tar pit's very famous. But a massive sinkhole opens up trapping, hundreds of people, sort of throwing them down into this insanely big black hole. And then we find out, about 5-10 minutes later that the people who fell in actually aren't dead. They're in this new mysterious and dangerous land. And it looks like there's no sort of technology there. People's cell phones are not working, but there are some creatures that are not shy to eat a person, including some wolves. So, they have to sort of get to know each other and band together to try and survive in Lost style. It's, the parallels are pretty obvious. But the wrinkle here is that we are going to follow this one main family who has been split apart. Two of the members, the son and the mother, are down they fell in the hole, and then the father and the daughter are above ground and trying to figure out what happened. And the father may have some sort of psychic abilities. We haven't quite tapped too into that yet, but the pilot episode sort of leads us in that direction. But there's also something mysterious going on with the government and their knowledge of what this hole could be or something. It's all look, they're not going to show their whole hand in the pilot, but look, this was more than enough for me to get hooked in. I think this is going to be an interesting show. I think the acting is better than in Manifest. That was my biggest problem. I loved that premise. But the acting was so god awful that I just I couldn't make it through more than like 3 or 4 episodes. In terms of the cast and characters, I didn't really recognize hardly anybody in this show. So Natalie Zia plays the mom, and then Elon Mackin plays the dad. Don't really know them. And then everybody else in the cast, again, I don't really know. Ione Skye has a recurring role, but other than that, it's all new people, which, that was sort of lost. I mean, Dominic Monaghan had done the Lord of the Rings movies, maybe not all of them, but at least one of them. And then, of course, I knew what's-his-face Jack from Party of Five. But other than that, yeah, I mean, like, everybody else was kind of just a character actor. Terry O'Quinn had done a few things here or there, but yeah, I mean, that was the first time we saw a lot of those people. So I think shows like this do sort of thrive off that environment of fresh faces. So you can't really get too invested in like, oh, well, that's just, this guy from this show that I used to watch. No, these are all, kind of new people. Manifest same way, and a lot of these shows like that. But I do like this concept. Now, I was talking about this before I had seen the pilot, but my buddy Tim, who frequents the channel, he had watched it and sort of given me his thoughts and thought the CGI wasn't, all that great. But, hey, let's give it a pass because it's broadcast television. To be honest, I thought the CGI was not bad. I mean, for a broadcast show, with not the budget of big budget movies and even some of the streamers these days, like Disney Plus has, a lot of high profile action stuff with the Marvel and the Star Wars stuff. I actually thought this looked pretty good. So that did not detract from my enjoyment of it at all. And in that first scene where they put the sinkhole in and all the buildings are falling and the cars are falling in, I actually thought that looked pretty solidly good. So I can't slag on it for that. The only thing I can really say in a major negative is that, at least so far, it is very, very Lost heavy. I think them making the reference, I'm not sure how I feel about it. Is it a better idea to just pretend like they don't know that this is like Lost, or should we just hit the nail right on the head and just say, well, we could be in an episode of Lost right now. We don't know. It was a little corny for my taste, personally. This is supposed to be a, drama show, a sci-fi. I know there's going to be a, little drips and drabs of comedy like there always is with this kind of thing. But, I'm not sure. But I'm enjoying sort of getting into the characters. I do think perhaps there are too many characters in that first episode to kind of keep up with. Because, of course, in Lost, you just had the island. We didn't meet the tailies until, might have been season 2. And so that gave us a whole new set of characters. But here we not only have all the people that fell in the sinkhole that we're getting to know, and there's probably maybe 8 to 10 major ones down there. But then we also have to know the characters up top on the surface and what they're dealing with and sort of that relationship. So I like that we're sort of only focusing in on the one family, because I think it would be real kind of hairy if we dealt with multiple family lines both above and below. So I like that, but I think I had a little hard time, connecting with a lot of the characters so far, just because there were too many to sort of attach yourself to. But I think that will get better as the season progresses. So overall, I really liked this. I give La Brea a B plus. I thought it was a good start to a new show. These shows usually never last, so I may wait out the season and see, if they renew it. Because if they don't and it ends on a cliffhanger, then I just won't waste my time. So we'll see. All right, let's go to a couple of shows from a few weeks ago that we just have not caught up on yet. FX on Hulu is going to contain the next two. Why the Last Man is the first one, and this is kind of fits right in with La Brea because it is also this sort of sci-fi drama, mysterious, surroundings, like what's going on. The general conceit is that there's this post-apocalyptic world, but some mysterious event that we don't know about yet killed every single mammal. Not just men. Men, boys. Boy animals. Anything with a Y chromosome, dead, except for one man played by Ben Schnetzer, Yorick Brown, and his pet monkey, who's also male, named Ampersand. So why are they still around? We don't know. And so they basically try to figure out, in the first two episodes, most people still don't know that he exists. But Diane Lane plays the new president, Jennifer Brown. She was, I forget, in the first episode, it's sort of a prologue. They actually dropped the first three episodes the first week. I watched two of them. So the first episode is kind of like a prologue. So there's actually a lot of men in that first one. But I forget what maybe Speaker of the House or something. But anyway, so she was the highest up on the chain of command. And so now she is the president in this new world. And so the second episode was kind of all about the dude, Yorick, trying to, figure out what's going on and why he is what he is. And he sort of woke up in like a train station or something, or some underground thing where he's like, what's going on? Where am I? So this is a show that we're all still trying to figure out everything with, even after these first two episodes. It is based on a comic book series of the same name, so that definitely lends itself to some of the characterization already there and some of the mystery elements already existing. I think they've done a pretty good job with it. I do think it's very, very dark visually in some of the scenes. I'm sure that's on purpose, but it was not very helpful for me to figure out what's going on. Also, they don't necessarily. There's so many men in that first episode, and I, of course, I did know the premise going into it, so I'm like, all right, I get that most of these men are going to die. I knew one survived, but I didn't know who. And so the whole first episode, I was like, okay, well, who's it going to be? And then we figure out who it is in the second episode. And I had almost forgotten what his part was in the first episode because there was so many men. So that was a little bit off balance for me. But I think at this point there's 4 or maybe even 5 episodes up since I said they dropped those 3 on the first week. But this is a weekly show that Hulu is running. They usually go on the weekly scene, which I can appreciate. I think this definitely has potential. I didn't find the episodes as engaging as La Brea. Thus far, I think, the characters are more just like very, very bland, and we don't really know anything about them other than, oh, we're women and we survived. Okay, cool. But what else? What were you doing before this? And they're talking about more of the like logistics of it in these first couple episodes, like, oh, well, we better get to the sperm banks before they get destroyed, and get the sperm so we can continue the to repopulate the earth, and all of this stuff. So I don't know, a show like this, it is a little hard to tell sometimes how it's going to go. So for now, I can sort of only grade it on these 2 episodes, which I think were intriguing, but I certainly was not as invested as I am with La Brea. So I'm going to leave this one with a B-. Why the Last Man? Also on FX on Hulu, we've got The Premise. Now, this is an anthology series. It's a half-hour anthology created by and written by, all of these are written by B.J. Novak. He, of course, made his way to fame in The Office. He played Ryan, and he was a writer on The Office. And he's done a few things since then, but I would say this is probably his highest profile since The Office, because it's his baby. He has executive produced it, created it, written it, and he doesn't star in them. But this is an anthology in the tradition of the Twilight Zone, where he does appear at the beginning of every episode. I think Rod Serling, if memory serves, on Twilight Zone, appeared at the beginning and the end of each episode. But this one, B.J. Novak just sort of appears at the beginning and sort of sets up the premise. And this is sort of the twist on this is like it's a modern day take on an anthology series. Everything is sort of very character driven, whereas I think things like Twilight Zone and Outer Limits and Alfred Hitchcock Presents are more, I think, situationally driven. And that's, perfectly fine. That worked certainly great in the 50s and 60s when sci-fi was really, kind of new to television and everything. But here, I think it's a great idea to sort of take some of the ideas that are permeating our present day and incorporate them. With an anthology show, I do try to watch 3 full episodes, because I think, look, every anthology can have a bad episode here or there. But I have to say, all 3 of the ones I watched were pretty intriguing. And there's some big names involved in these, too. Episode 1 includes Tracy Ellis Ross, Jermaine Fowler, and Ben Platt. Episode 2 included Beau Bridges, John Barenthal, Amy Landecker. And then episode 3, Lucas Hedges, O'Shea Jackson Jr., Ed Asner is even in it, in what has got to be his last role, I guess, unless he has something else in the can. So yeah, that's very cool. Upcoming ones are going to include Daniel Day Kim and some other people like that. So I don't know if BJ is ever going to be in one of them, but so far, he's just sort of the presenter. But what I liked about this more than almost anything else is that in, I would say, all 3 of them, I didn't quite know where the story was taking us. And I loved that. I thought that was really, really interesting. A lot of these are like, okay, they're character studies, so it can go this way or this way, and you figure they're going to do one. But I would have to say, maybe in all 3 of them, it subverted a lot of the things I was thinking, and turned it sort of on its ear. And the subject matters. The one is about the social justice sex tape. There's a courtroom battle with this African American who supposedly, pushed the police officer. That's what they're accusing him of. But this guy's sex tape from his apartment way up there, has on it that if you zoom out, you can see the scene and no, he didn't do it. But then this guy's life turns upside down, and they sort of delve into his life from this sex tape, and so it goes off in that direction. I really found this to be an intriguing show, and I'm a big fan of anthology series. For one thing, if, in this day and age when there's literally 600 different shows on in any particular year, and I can't watch them all. I try to do my best with the ones I enjoy, which ends up being like over 200 a year these days. But an anthology is something that you can just pick up anywhere. It doesn't have a thread going through it. Now, there's anthology series with seasons that are, the same, like American Horror Story. That's an anthology by season. So you do have to follow along the whole season, but you can kind of pick and choose your seasons. But this is in the famous tradition of just every episode is a completely different cast, completely different premise. And so I really have always sort of liked that concept, and sometimes it's done well, sometimes it's done poorly. But I have to say, since I started doing these reviews 2 years ago, I've done at least 3 anthology series. There's the one on Apple Plus that I can't think of that I love. There's Modern Love, which I thought was okay. And I think there was one maybe on HBO as well. But this is the best of them. I grading these episodes individually, they would all get like A's or A minus. I really, really enjoyed these first 3 episodes. And kudos to BJ Novak for doing everything himself. I mean, this is his baby, and clearly he has a great artistic vision. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. For now, I'm going to leave the premise with an A minus. I think a show that we kind of need right now. It's, very topical and done very well. So on the flip side of that is this HBO's Tale Scenes from a Marriage. And This is something that is a remake of an Ingmar Bergman classic from 1973. It was a Swedish miniseries back then, and it's still a miniseries now. This is not going to be, an ongoing series, just a mini. I think there's maybe 5 episodes total, but it stars Jessica Chastain and Oscar Isaac as this couple whose marriage is very much on the rocks, but they agree to do, for some reason, they agree to do this psychological look into their marriage by this grad student who's doing a paper. And so a lot of that first episode, at least the first 15 minutes of the first episode, is sort of in her office, and they're sort of going back and forth and saying things, but then we sort of drop that whole premise and move on to their day-to-day life. And by the end of the first episode, we find out that she is pregnant at 39 years old, and so then dealing with that. So other people in this include Corey Stoll, who you know from so many different things. He's a bald dude. He was in Ant-Man, and he's done 100 things. He's the only other person I recognize, though. But this is an example of something that I think, like the premise, I thought was very timely. And this is something that I think is the opposite. It has a lot of the same actually charms of the premise because, this is something limited. You can watch it in 5 hours. And obviously, Jessica Chastain and Oscar Isaac, I mean, this is a masterclass in acting. These two guys are great together. But here's my issue with it. It's so bone dry because it is a character study. It is a very, very fine-tuned, character look. And so the background stuff doesn't matter. We're just looking into these two people's lives and, okay, let's see what's going on with them. Well, that was a very novel concept in 1973 when Bergman did it. There's no doubt about that. But since then, we've had so much of this. And I think, I make fun of my buddy Justin for, loving this Before series, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight. It's a trio of films with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. And really, they are probably the pinnacle of this type of thing, in my lifetime. But recently, we've also had other things like Marriage Story with Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson. Same kind of, principle. That was specifically about a couple divorcing and their, what they go through with that. This is more, we're still married, but we're on the rocks and whatever. But the point is, it's so passe at this point. This is 2021 now. There is a reason that all of these, largely, black movies and TV shows are resonating so much with people, and to maybe a lesser extent, all the LGBTQ stuff as well. That's something a little bit different. As a gay man, I didn't have a voice, in the media for years and years and years. The first couple decades of my life, there was nothing. So now we're getting all this. And so things like Judah and the Black Messiah and the Trial of Chicago 7, and all these things are really getting a higher profile. And these are kind of character studies as well. But when I watched this, I barely made it through the first episode. I just thought, what is the point of this? I don't care about these people. I'm in 2021. This is kind of a rant at this point, but in 2021, there's just no reason to be doing this sort of rich people, woe is me. I can't say they're rich white people because Oscar Isaac is not white, but it's this whole thing of like, oh, woe is us, our marriage is on the rocks and we can't get it together, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Marriage Story, and I liked that movie and I gave it a pretty high grade, probably an A- or a B+, but that's something I'll never watch again. It just sucks the life out of you to watch. So look, I am giving Scenes from a Marriage a very mild positive grade only for the masterclass in acting that are Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain. And I just saw her in the Tammy Faye movie, which she was fantastic, and she'll get an Oscar nomination for sure. But this is something that I will not continue to watch. I don't care. But if you want a career on the stage, or it works like a play basically, this thing. If you want a career in theater on the stage, this is where you go. Okay, great, more power to you, hats off, this is the masterclass. But it's just so unnecessary in 2021. In 1973, revelation for sure. Now, who cares? So I give Scenes from a Marriage a B minus. I know my rant would indicate probably a worse grade, but you can't deny the magnificent acting coming out of these two people. And Corey Stoll does a great job too. He plays one of their buddies who they're also sort of going through a divorce themselves. So, all right. So we close with two sort of variety shows, game shows, talk shows. We usually close with that kind of stuff. And at first I wasn't sure I was going to review these at all, but I figured, you know what, I had talked about them enough in the news segments over the last couple of years, so let's do it. First up is going to be the Nick Cannon. It's just called Nick Cannon. Not the Nick Cannon Show, because there already is a show called that from Nickelodeon way back in the day. But it's called Nick Cannon, and it is syndicated to your local markets. I was able to watch the first episode on YouTube. I think all the episodes are up on YouTube a week after the fact. So if you're interested, you can check it out. But I have mixed feelings about Nick Cannon. I do my Masked Singer reviews every week, and I've often commented that I much preferred when Niecy Nash hosted for a few weeks when Nick Cannon had COVID. And I stand by that. I same thing with when he was on America's Got Talent. He was all right, but I much preferred some of the other hosts that they've had on that show before and since. Terry Crews was great. I thought Jerry Springer was pretty fun. Nick Cannon, he was okay. But he's never somebody that I've been like really drawn to and be like, oh yeah, that guy is cool. But here's what I don't quite get about Nick Cannon is that he made these very, very anti-Semitic comments about a year ago. And there was a big, I talked about it in TV news. CBS Viacom, canceled Wild and Out. And, they had this big fight with him over it. And I listened to the podcast that he was on talking about it, and it was not, they were not good words, but for some reason, no one seemed to care, and he's been forgiven, and okay, great. We love Nick Cannon again. Go Nick. Now, they did brush this show off for a year. This was actually supposed to debut in the fall of 2020, but because of those comments, they said, well, let's put this on the back burner, let some of the heat die down, but he continued to host Masked Singer or whatever. So now he has a show. And the show itself is okay. I do think he's a good interviewer. I think that is where the show shines the most, because a lot of these new talk shows, and I said this, when we did Kelly Clarkson and Drew Barrymore, a lot of these new talk shows, it takes a little bit of time to really find your interviewing style. Lily Sings on NBC, same thing. That is not a problem that Nick Cannon had at all. Very, very relatable, very comfortable interviewing people. Great. My big problem with this show is I didn't feel included at all. This seems like a show that is purposely designed not for me. And I'm an entertainment dude, but when I think about some of the famous, African Americans that have hosted talk shows over the years, Oprah obviously is, the GOAT, but like Tyra Banks as well, or even Montel, they were for everybody. This show is so specific to a Black audience, and that's fine. But as such, I can't grade it very well because I didn't feel like I was included. First of all, and Arsenio Hall is a great example. I watched him all the time as a kid. Everybody was included on Arsenio, but the entire audience was Black. He mentioned that they were in Harlem probably 8 to 10 times, and that's not an exaggeration. His only guest on that first episode was Kevin Hart. So I just didn't feel included. I just felt like, okay, well, this show obviously isn't for me, and I review shows sometimes that aren't necessarily with my demographic in mind, but it felt like I was sort of being shut out of something, and I didn't like that feeling. And maybe that's combined with the fact that I don't really like Nick Cannon that much anyway. His interviewing style is great. That's the part that he really excels at. He is a good interviewer, so I will give him props for that. But this show was just something that I didn't feel like I was invited to watch. And so I give Nick Cannon a D plus. Everybody was included, black, white, whatever, didn't matter. And here I didn't feel that way at all. All right, so You Bet Your Life is last. Jay Leno hosts this. Now, this is, of course, a reboot of the Groucho series started on the radio in the 40s and then moved to TV where it was a very, very, big rating success for 15 years or whatever. And then they revived it with Bill Cosby at some point, I guess in the 90s. And now it's Jay Leno. And boy, here's another dog for you. I didn't like this one either. And I love a good game show. The premise of You Bet Your Life is largely for the host, whoever he is, and they haven't had any women, so I say he, to sort of trot out some of their comedy routines. Groucho obviously very quick-witted, so he would always, he didn't do a monologue per se, but he would have a little back and forth with the announcer, and then they would meet the contestants, and then for like 5 minutes he'd talk to the contestants and sort of riff with them, and then they'd move into the game. The game is very simple, it's just trivia based, and they only ask like 5 questions, and then okay, either you win or you lose, and you're done, whatever. And the money structure is always different in every iteration, but here, I think there's 5 questions, and the most you can win is $5,500 at the end of the day. Kevin Eubanks is back from the old Jay Leno Tonight Show way back when. They had some sort of falling out for years, but I guess they mended fences, and so he's back as sort of the announcer and sort of the Jay Leno comic foil. But look, Jay Leno's another one. It's sort of like Nick Cannon. I don't think Jay Leno's funny. I think he can be funny, but from all the, the showbiz stories about him, and I'm a huge Conan fan, a huge Letterman fan, 2 guys that Leno really, screwed over the years. But I don't think his stand-up is necessarily bad. I just think he's the most basic comedian you could have. He's so milquetoast and just, we can't offend anybody ever, and that's okay. But at least be funny then, don't be so bland. But the show started with a headlines. He did his old headlines routine from The Tonight Show in the start of that first episode of You Bet Your Life. So each episode starts with like a comedy bit, and almost all of them are ripped from, they did jaywalking. Like they're almost all ripped from the original Tonight Show. It's like, it's so lame. Another rip-off attempt with Jay Leno. And also, he doesn't seem like he even wants to be there, which is bizarre because he certainly doesn't need a paycheck, But I also, as the later years of You Bet Your Life, the original show went on, I felt the same about Groucho. So maybe he's sort of trying to emulate that sort of aloofness that Groucho had, where he's like, well, I don't really care, what happens. I don't care if you win or lose. I don't care that I'm here. Leno picked up on that. And so maybe it's an homage to Groucho. I don't know, but rubbed me the wrong way. The fact that they just trotted headlines out immediately told me like, okay, so now he's just trying to do yet another iteration of The Tonight Show, only this time with games, kind of like Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show, So this was a pass for me. I give You Bet Your Life with Jay Leno a D. So I usually love a game show. We've rated a couple in that lower tier. I know the hot ones where they eat the wings. I gave that like a D or a D plus. I didn't like that either. But most of the time, I'm on board with a game show, at least in some sort of positive way. But yeah, not this one. So a couple of duds for me with Nick Cannon and Jay Leno there. But again, 2 people who I'm not super fond of to begin with, so it's a little easier to like the Drew Barrymore show or the Kelly Clarkson show. So with that in mind, we will end there. We have, I think, one more new broadcast show in the coming week. I believe it's CBS's Ghosts, which is a sitcom. And then still catching up on all of these other things. We've got the Dan Brown one on Peacock. I think that's called The Lost Symbol. The Joseph Gordon-Levitt one I mentioned earlier on Apple TV+. There's a lot. I have a whole list of them that I'm just sort of checking off as we go. So we'll keep it going. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.